Hi, I'm Paulo Varquez, and welcome to the first episode of this podcast. I'm planning on having episodes uploaded on regular podcast stations as well as on YouTube. The purpose of this podcast is so you all could listen to the experiences of those who have student loans, the struggles, successes, and everything in between. I'll also invite some experts in different areas so we could listen to different views of this crisis. One hope for this podcast is to influence the policymakers to address this issue that many of us are facing and many of us struggling at the same time. So this first episode will talk about my student loan journey and my background so you know where I'm coming from. Because our experiences shapes our beliefs and perspectives, so you'll be able to see the angle that I'll be bringing in. So I was born in Philippines. I'm Filipino, and I'm not a nurse, which is a miracle, but my mom is. When I was young, we went to Singapore for my dad's work, and then we went back to the Philippines for about a year. And then we came here to the US, and I was around 8 to 9 years old when I got here in California, in Anaheim. And we came here because of my dad's work, and he was able to get his citizenship through his work, which is rare nowadays. And it was interesting because when I was in Singapore and Philippines, I struggled in school. I wasn't a top student. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult for me. When I came here in the US, it was a joke. The math I learned in second grade in Singapore was the math I was learning in fifth grade here. So elementary school all the way high school was pretty easy for me. After high school, I went to UC Santa Barbara, beautiful campus. And my reason for going there were several reasons. One is to get out of the house, like many rebelling teenagers. Second was pretty much, I felt was almost like brainwashed from society. Parents, teachers, counselors tend to have a message that UCs are better than Cal States. So community college was just out of the question. Later I learned that was all BS. So when I went to UCSB, I graduated high school in 2010. My first major was actually computer engineering, right? My first GPA in my first quarter in UC Santa Barbara was a 2.1, and I panicked and I thought I was gonna get kicked out because if you get another 2.0 and you continue to not pass your classes, there's their academic probation, they'll just kick you out. And I really thought I was gonna get kicked out. In high school, again, I didn't struggle at all. I was a 4.0 student, so that was a big shocker for me. My unweighted GPA was actually a 4.3 or something like that. Like millions of others, high school didn't really prepare me at all when it came to college. In high school, at least where I went, a lot of the public schools that are kind of low income areas, you could probably do all the homework, fail all the tests, and you could still pass the class with like a B. At UCSB and other UCs or other universities, it was the opposite. It took me about 2.5 years to learn how to actually study. So I changed majors multiple times. My next major was biopsychology, and then I turned into psychology, and eventually I fell into sociology because for me it had the most interesting topics for me anyways. So for example, I took classes on social inequality, social stratification, juvenile justice, basically classes that anger a lot of people and show the dark side of America. And so eventually I got my bachelor's in sociology with a minor in applied psychology and education. And also in terms of student loans, this was actually where most of my student loans came from undergrad, which is pretty insane for a bachelor's degree. So I'll talk more on detail about how I paid this off. But yeah, so basically the student loans were a combination of my student loans and also parent plus loans from both my parents. And for those of you that don't know, students can only take out so much student loans. after a certain amount, your parents have to take out loans for you. In my case, I ended up having to pay for, both my parent plus loans, because in my head, I kind of figured, why are they paying for my education? That doesn't make any sense. So I pretty much took over those loans. So just to give you an example, like my parent plus loans, my dad's parent plus loans was $20,000. That's how much I took out, right? After 10 years of interest of about 7%, it accrued another $15,000. That $20,000 turned into $35,000. And when you're young, you don't really understand what that really means when you start working. When you start working, you're like, whoa, that's going to take a lot of time. Because people think, when you're in high school, I'm going to graduate, I'll make $50,000 out of after I graduate. I don't think they realize, taxes are going to eat up like a lot of that income, and you have to pay for all this other stuff, right? Like no one talks, like you have to pay for rent. If you buy a car, again, budgeting is something that, they don't really teach you that much in high school. Maybe they have like a day, a financial literacy day. But again, that was a missing piece for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. So like many people, I had no financial literacy out of high school, and everyone was pretty much telling me, hey, just take out the loans and just pay it off later. And that's probably one of the worst advice I probably received, and millions of others and like yourself. And that's probably why you're listening to this. So I definitely, at UCSB, I definitely had a college experience. I had a beach view from my dorm my first year. The sun used to wake me up in the morning. I start sweating, but was that all worth it for the student loans? That question is debatable, right? So I actually did a lot during my college years, like my undergrad years. I did a lot. So I worked with over 10 professors and PhD students working with research projects. So I had a really strong foundation in the research process. I just checked my transcripts, and I had 19 units of research assistant units. It was crazy. And also I did a few internships there as well. I also worked during college. I wasn't just taking out loans and not working. I was also working. And I basically, one of my roles there was basically campus security. And it was a pretty fun job. So despite working, I still had a lot of student loans. So again, I had the perspective of just taking out student loans, paid off later, and like not worrying about it, right? So if you're in high school and you're listening to this, please don't do that. You're basically screwing yourself in the future. If there's one advice you could take from this episode, it's this. If you have to take out student loans, take out what you need and set up some auto payment like every month. It could be like $20 a month, $10 a month, something to have that automation coming in. If you could put more, even better, because those interest, I don't think people know how that works. Once you listen to other episodes of this podcast, you'll hear some horror stories, I could almost guarantee you. And so my goal here is really to try to prevent that from happening for our future generation. And yes, you'll thank me later if you're not in college yet and you're deciding to go. So right after my time in UC Santa Barbara, I actually went for my master's right away. So I moved back home. I saved a lot of money. So I went to Cal State Long Beach. I did their master's in counseling and had an emphasis in school counseling to be able to work with students in elementary school to high school age, because I had low income. When I was in Santa Barbara, I was only working part time. Grants, I was able to get grants for financial aid, and they pretty much covered most of my master's tuition, which was great. So for those that are thinking about getting like a master's or a PhD, and you're still in college right now, or maybe you're still in high school, I'm not sure, who I'm talking to now, but it's actually better for you to keep going instead of taking a break. Most people take a break, and it's totally fine, right? If you need a break, go for it. However, in terms of financial aid, the less money you made the previous years, the more money you're more likely to get in terms of financial aid. So think about that. So when I was at my master's, I actually got another grant. I got a graduate research fellowship for my research project, which gave me $9,000, which really helped a lot. And so my original plan for work was actually working in the high school setting. So in addition to student loans, I'm very passionate about career development And I wanted to update the high school education system so it's more aligned to careers as opposed to what college do you want to go to. So in my perspective, it's sort of backwards. It should be, what's your career goals? What's the best major or program to get there? And then what college offers those majors or program that will help you get that will help you pursue your goals. So right now it's, maybe things have changed now, but for the most part, from what I keep seeing, it seems to be the message is still sort of backwards from my perspective. So after my master's, I ended up taking a career services position at a community college. Actually, it was so difficult to find a job in high school. I applied to 127 jobs in the high school level, had about 25-ish interviews and no luck. So I came to a desperation mode where I was like, I'm just gonna take the best job that's whatever the first offer I'll take, and they end up being Coastline College, which is a community college in Orange County. So we're in the same district as Orange Coast College and Golden West College. So I've been here for over 5 years already and absolutely love my job. It's very fulfilling, helping students progress in their educational and career journey. And I'm also a part-time career and academic counselor in addition to my full-time role. So I was teaching career and life planning classes as an instructor. Right now I'm providing counseling evening hours for students who are working full-time. And I'm also involved in other projects for my college. For example, I'm the lead for the financial literacy group for our college. So I actually applied for my doctorate in education with a specialization in community college. So it's an EDD program, not a PhD. And yeah, if you don't know the difference, go ahead and Google it, right? So PhD is more focused on research and the EDD is more for practitioners. And one of the benefits, I'll talk about that later. But basically, I applied to the EDD program at Cal State Fullerton. 3 months I started working at Coastline, which is very fast. I actually was not planning on applying until 3 years of gaining experience. But I did but I applied what I always told my students, which is apply and don't think about it. I also knew how financial aid works, and I kind of figured, I get some kind of need-based grant if I apply now and hopefully get in. Which was exactly right. So Cal State Fullerton gave me, I think, like $8,000 in grants my first year or something like that. And that's a pretty significant amount. And Cal State Fullerton's a public program. It's not a private. So it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to get in. So it was pretty affordable. So my work also provided me $3,000 per year as a benefit. So I definitely took advantage of that as well. So the EDD program at Cal State Fullerton was a 3-year program, and my district basically funded $9,000 of my program. So the total cost for my program was $47,000, which sounds a lot, right? But it was way more affordable and cheaper than other EDD programs in the area, like USC, Chapman, or Pepperdine. It was basically double over there. It was like $80,000 over there. So one reason why I chose this program was because the EDD was really tailored for working professionals. I was able to work full time and continue gaining that work experience throughout the 3 years. I didn't want to stop that work experience and just to continue school, because I didn't want to fall into that trap where a lot of people also fall, where they're overeducated but they have no experience. We have all these like people with PhDs, but they have no experience, so they can't find jobs. So you need to have both. You need to have the experience and education together. It's going to work together to make you very marketable. So again, I was practicing what I preach, and I always tell my students, hey, you need to have relevant experience while you're doing school. Okay. And I highly recommend, the Cal State Fullerton program was great. I highly recommend it. It was a strong program, great faculty, great courses, great curriculum, and it was a very strong focus on just equity and inclusive education. So highly recommend it. And it was also very challenging. I'm talking about it as if it was like nothing, but no, it was very challenging. It was a lot of work, very time consuming, and having to balance working full time plus taking classes at night and sacrificing your weekends. It was it was an investment, and definitely it's very challenging. At the same time, I also knew I had the privilege of time and not having kids or crazy responsibilities like that, right? So I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I still had a strong school work ethic because I didn't I just graduated. So I did this program I started in 2017 for my EDD. I graduated from my master's in 2016. So I still kind of was still semi-fresh. I still kind of knew what to expect. So the transition was not as significant than those individuals who maybe had they haven't gone back in school for 10 years. So coming back was whoa, I got to give up way more. So that's, I thought about that and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be that stressed later in life. So I'll just do the stress earlier and just get it out of the way. That's exactly what I did. And because I worked full time, I was able to save and pay off the tuition. No way in hell I will take out more student loans. So I learned my lesson from undergrad. I'm very frugal with my money and figure out ways to save as much as possible. So I also have a lot of certificates here and there, but I'll probably talk about that in future episodes. So I graduated from my doctorate when I was 29 years old during the pandemic in 2020. So I actually defended my dissertation with a suit on the top and shorts at the bottom, pandemic style. So I completely paid off so one of my biggest accomplishments this year was completely paying off my student loans. So I completed everything in October of 2021. So this year I paid $42,000 in student loans. So that was a big accomplishment for me. So I will talk about how I paid off those student loans in the future. And it took a lot of discipline, sacrifice, and focus for sure. So the total of my student loans was about $70,000 or $75,000. So I knocked everything out the last few years. So again, in a future episode, I'll talk about how I did that, my strategies, and really going hardcore on it. So on the weekends, for example, I would do Uber, I would do Lyft, I would do Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Shipt, Instacart, and I'm sure there's others that I'm probably forgetting. So if you use one of those services, I probably have delivered in your house if you live in the Orange County area in California. So it was a hustle for sure. So again, I'll share more of that in a future episode, and our guests that are going to be in this podcast is also going to share their strategy as well. So that's a little bit about myself. So please share this to those who are struggling with student loans or those who you think would be helpful. So if you're interested in sharing your story, please email me at studentloanexperience@gmail.com and we could set up a Zoom session. Thank you for watching this on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification, and follow our podcast. So go ahead and comment down below. How can you relate to the information I just shared right now? And please follow our podcast on the description down below. See you soon. Peace.